Our state began its journey towards capital punishment, at least under the English experience, in 1608 at Jamestown. Captain George Kendall was the first person executed in the United States under European rule by a guy for treason. Since then, we've had hundreds and hundreds of people executed, 113 in Virginia since Furman v. Georgia in 1976. We're second only to Texas. There are 6 problems, I believe, with the death penalty as it's currently administered. First of all, the biggest problem is that we often have executed the innocent in this country. Today, we've had 143 people who've been on death row who've been exonerated, people who were sentenced to death who turned out were actually innocent, mainly because of DNA evidence, but a few others, I believe, for other reasons. But executing the innocent is probably the absolute worst thing that our government could ever do. And it's one of the big problems of this. You can't take it back.
This is a justice issue. The data shows that this is used primarily on African Americans, particularly poor ones. The data shows that if you're a black person killing a white person, you are 3 times more likely to get the death penalty. The data shows in Virginia that overwhelmingly that blacks, even since 1982, have been 46% of the people executed, whereas we only account for 19-20% of the population. The data shows that African Americans have a different justice system in America. This is just another example of a system. And let me say from personal experience, I've had cousins, very close friends murdered, and the victim, the offender never got the death penalty in those cases where it was black on black. We often say that 90% of crime is black on black and 80% of crime is white on white, which is true. But the death penalty is really used when it's black on white crime. It wasn't until 1997 that a white person was actually sentenced to death for killing a black person. So this is a justice issue, and I want to speak in support of this bill.
I'm one of the 43% of Americans Senator Surville described who are morally opposed to the death penalty for anyone, no matter the crime or act. And I say this as a woman, as a mother of 2 children. I've seen people who have been victims of violence in my community, in my inner circle of friends and family. And regardless, as a committed believer in nonviolence and care for our communities and community healing, which includes accountability, the death penalty goes well past any justifiable consequences. This is state-sanctioned murder, and we remove any chance for restitution or correction of mistakes, which people have demonstrated how many have been killed and then found to be innocent. Even 1 is way too many. It's also established as a legacy, another legacy of white supremacy and deathly oppression enacted against our Black communities in Virginia. And as a white community member, I'm asking you to change our course.
You may recall that in May of 2017, Special Agent Mike Walters, while patrolling the city of Richmond, was shot and killed. His murderer was apprehended, sentenced to capital murder, and received 36 years. So in response to Senator Surville's that 60% of the people support life in prison, Mike Walters' killer will not serve life in prison. To the contrary, he will get out when Special Agent Mike Walters' children are barely adults, because they were very young children when he was murdered. Just last year, we saw a convicted murderer of a Richmond police officer who was released after 40 years. Not only are they not getting the death sentence, they're not even getting life in prison. Life no longer means life.
Okay.
My name is Michelle Dearmeyer, and I am the widow of Virginia State Police Trooper Chad Philip Dearmeyer, who was murdered at the Greyhound Richmond bus station on March 31st, 2016. I am strongly against this proposed legislation abolishing the death penalty for all crimes, especially capital murder of a law enforcement officer. This decision should be left to the victim's family on deciding whether or not to seek the death penalty. The paramount goal of sentencing is the imposition of justice, and for some families whose loved ones were violently and cruelly taken from them by the choice another individual made, that justice is death. I understand not all people, especially criminals, would find the death penalty a deterrent, just as strict gun laws do not deter criminals from getting guns. However, the death penalty ensures the killer will never kill someone else again, including other prisoners, guards, and people outside of prison in cases of escape or early release. A sentence of life in prison does not always mean life in prison. Michael Connors was a Richmond police officer who was shot in the neck and several times in the head by an evil man on November 13th, 1979. And now this convicted killer, who was given a life sentence, is free. He served a mere 41 years for making the choice to take a police officer's life. His release is shameful by all of those involved. Connors, at the age of 23, made a choice, just like my husband, to serve and protect the citizens in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Eliminating the death penalty cheapens murder. An executed death sentence absolutely guarantees the killer will never kill again. It is imperative that Virginia continues to allow the death penalty as an option for those families who make the decision to seek it as justice for their loved one's death.